Story 1. Help Wanted. We were both in our early 20s, fresh out of college, caught between the end of youth and the start of whatever came next. The idea of driving across a new country felt like freedom. No plans, no deadlines, just open road and possibility. That fall, we chose the Pacific Northwest. It seemed far enough from everything familiar, wild, and full of space. We wanted adventure, and we thought the mountains would give it to us. We started in Seattle, heading south along the coast, then cutting inland toward the drier country of eastern Oregon. The farther we drove, the emptier the world became. Towns thinned out, gas stations grew miles apart, and the roads stretched endlessly through red dust and sun-bleached hills. We didn't mind at first. That isolation was what we'd come for. Jessica loved driving, her arm hanging out the window, the wind tangling her hair. I handled the map, the playlists, the snacks. We sang along to old songs, made stupid jokes, and talked about the future like it was still something we could design from scratch. By the end of the first week, though, the money was running low, so we started scrolling through online ads looking for temporary work, farm hands, fruit picking, house sitting, anything, and that's when we found the post. It was on a site like Craigslist. The title said help needed, remote property, short-term work, room and board provided. The description was brief. A family needed help with simple household tasks, perfect for backpackers. There was a phone number. I called, half expecting no one to answer. But a woman picked up after 2 rings. Her voice was soft and careful, almost shy. "Hello," she said. "Hi, we saw your ad. My friend and I are traveling through. Would you still need help?" There was a pause before she replied. "The ad's for one person," she said slowly, "but our neighbors might need help too. You and your friend could both come." "That'd be great," I said, smiling at Jessica. "How do we find you?" "My husband can pick you up from town," she said. "There's a gas station in Burns. He'll meet you there tomorrow at noon." She hesitated for a moment before adding, almost as an afterthought, "It's quiet out here, no distractions. Just bring what you need." We laughed about that later, calling it creepy but charming. Halloween was coming up, and we joked that we'd found the perfect place to celebrate. A remote farmhouse, a sky full of stars, maybe a campfire if we were lucky. The next day we pulled into Burns, a single dusty street with a gas station, a cafe, and not much else. At exactly noon, an old pickup truck rumbled into the lot. The man behind the wheel was tall and broad, maybe in his 40s, his face carved deep by sun and work. He didn't smile. "I'm Tom," he said. "You're the girls from the ad?" We nodded. "Get in," he said. "It's a long drive." Jessica and I climbed into the back seat with our bags. The first stretch was quiet, except for the hum of the tires and the rattle of the truck's frame. The paved road gave way to dirt, then to narrow tracks between dry scrub. "How far is it?" Jessica asked eventually. "Far enough," Tom said. No one bothers us out there." I glanced at Jessica. She shrugged, trying to look relaxed, but her fingers tapped nervously on her knee. After an hour, my phone lost signal. Tom's hands tightened on the wheel, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror more often than seemed necessary. I tried to make conversation. "Do you guys do anything for Halloween out here?" He grunted. "Too busy for that nonsense." After that, silence. The sun began to drop behind the trees and the air turned colder. When the truck finally stopped, we were in front of a small, weathered farmhouse surrounded by empty fields. A few outbuildings stood nearby, paint peeling, doors hanging crooked. A woman came out to meet us, thin, pale, her eyes downcast. "You must be the helpers," she said softly. "I'm Mary. You'll be staying upstairs." She turned to Jessica. "Tom will take you to the neighbors. They're just down the way." "How far is that?" Jessica asked. "Not far," Tom said. Let's go." He motioned for her to get back in the truck. She hesitated, looking at me. "See you soon," she said. I watched them drive off, dust swirling behind them until the truck disappeared into the horizon. Mary gave me a short tour of the kitchen and bathroom, her voice distant. "Food's in the fridge. You can help with cleaning tomorrow." Then she disappeared down the hall, leaving me alone. Hours passed. The light faded, and I heard the truck return, but only one door slammed. Tom came inside, wiping his hands. "Where's Jessica?" I asked. "She settled in," he said. "You'll see her tomorrow." Something in the way he said it made my stomach twist. I tried to brush it off. We were tired. Maybe I was overthinking. But that night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight I heard slow footsteps on the stairs, then a soft, metallic sound, the click of a lock. The doorknob turned. I froze. The door opened just enough for light from the hall to spill in. Tom stood there, his silhouette filling the frame. "Just checking if you need anything," he said quietly. "I'm fine," I whispered. He lingered for a second longer than he should have, then closed the door. I heard the click again, this time from the outside. My blood went cold. I got up, tried the knob, locked. "Hey," I called, "it's stuck." No response. I went to the window. It was nailed shut, the glass cloudy with grime. No way out. My phone was dead now, no service even if I charged it. I barely slept that night, listening for footsteps, voices, anything. In the morning, a tray appeared under the door, bread, cheese, and a glass of water. "What's going on?" I shouted. "Why am I locked in here?" Mary's voice came from the other side, weak and trembling. "It's for your own good. Just stay calm." "Where's Jessica?" "She's fine. Eat your food." I kicked the door until my legs hurt. No answer. The next night I heard voices downstairs, Tom and Mary talking in hushed tones. "The buyer's ready," Tom said. "We'll do it tomorrow." "Keep her quiet," Mary whispered. "No trouble before then." The words sank in slowly, like poison. "Buyer, tomorrow." My hands shook as I rummaged through my bag. I found a small fruit knife. Dull, but better than nothing. I started digging at the door frame, trying to pry the lock loose. Sometime after noon, a new sound broke through, a vehicle approaching. Different engine, heavier. A man's voice called from outside. "Tom, you home? Saw a light in the upstairs room last night. Thought you didn't have guests." I banged on the door, screaming, "Help, please! I'm locked in here." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Tom burst into the hall, shouting, "Quiet!" But another man was right behind him, older, in work clothes, face red from the sun. He saw me through the open door, wild-eyed and trembling. "What the hell's this?" he demanded. Tom stammered something about me being sick, about keeping me safe. The man didn't buy it. "She's terrified," he snapped. "You open that damn door right now." When Tom hesitated, the man shoved past him and tore the lock open. "Come with me," he said, grabbing my arm. "Now." We ran down the stairs. Mary was crying in the kitchen, begging him not to call the police. "Don't do this, please. We didn't mean—" He ignored her. We bolted outside to his truck. As he started the engine, I gasped. "My friend, she's at the neighbor's." His jaw tightened. "I'll check." When we reached the next property, he broke the window to get inside. Jessica was there, pale, terrified, locked in a room just like mine. She threw her arms around me, shaking. They said I owed them for the ride, she whispered. They wouldn't let me go. The man drove us both to town, straight to the police. On the way, he said quietly, I've suspected them for months. Strange people coming and going, but I never thought it was this. The police raided both properties that night. What they found still makes my skin crawl. Documents, photos, records of missing travelers. Tom and Mary weren't just con artists. They were part of an organ trafficking ring that targeted backpackers. The neighbors were in on it too. Jessica and I gave our statements, sat through the trials, watched them get sentenced. Everyone called us lucky. But lucky doesn't cover the way my heart still races when I hear footsteps at night, or how I wake up sometimes convinced that door is locked again. We don't talk about Halloween anymore. We don't talk about that road trip at all. Now when I travel, I stick to the city's crowds, lights, noise. Because out there, where the roads go quiet and the stars hang too low, I've learned how easily people can disappear. Story 2, Highway to Nowhere. The plan was simple. Drive from California to Nevada, hit a few small towns, and spend Halloween weekend in Las Vegas with friends. Just us, our old blue van, and the open road. The morning we left, the sky was pale and empty, a thin chill in the October air. Alex loaded the last bag into the back and grinned at me like a kid about to set off on a treasure hunt. Nevada, here we come, he said, giving the van's hood an affectionate pat. I loved seeing him like that, easy, happy, free. He took the wheel. I handled the music. The highway stretched ahead, endless and quiet except for the occasional truck rolling by. I flipped through playlists until we found the right one. Old rock, the kind that made the miles melt away. Alex drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, humming along. This is going to be the best trip ever, he said, glancing at me. He reached over and squeezed my hand. I smiled back, feeling like maybe it really would be. By noon, the sun hung high over the desert. We stopped at a lonely gas station with peeling paint and a hand-painted sign that read, Cold drinks, restrooms round back. The clerk behind the counter, a grizzled man with yellowed eyes and a cigarette tucked behind one ear, rang us up for 2 coffees. You folks heading east? He asked, eyeing our plates. Yeah, Alex said, Las Vegas. The man nodded slowly, tapping ash into an old can. Watch those long stretches between towns, he said. Not much out there if you break down after dark. Alex laughed. We'll be fine. Got a full tank and good music. The clerk didn't laugh back. Sure, he said, his voice dry. Just keep your doors locked. Back in the van, Alex shook his head. Guy probably just watches too many horror movies. Maybe, I said, though something about the way the man's eyes had lingered stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. The hours rolled by. We talked about everything. Our future, jobs, the party in Vegas. Alex said he wanted to go as a vampire. I told him the fangs would make him look ridiculous. As long as you're my victim, he said with a wink. It'll be perfect. By late afternoon, the light began to fade, painting the desert in gold and rust. We hadn't seen another car in ages. That's when I noticed headlights behind us. A pickup truck, dark red, or maybe brown, following a little too closely. At first, I thought nothing of it. Then the driver started flashing his lights. Alex frowned, glancing in the rearview mirror. What's that guy doing? The truck sped up until it was beside us. The driver, A tall man in a wide-brimmed hat gestured toward the back of our van, shouting something we couldn't hear. "Looks like he's saying something's wrong," Alex said. "Maybe a tire or the exhaust." I felt a flicker of unease. "Can't we just drive to the next town and check there?" Alex hesitated, then shook his head. "If it's something serious, better to fix it now." He pulled over onto the gravel shoulder. The pickup stopped right behind us. My stomach tightened. The man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his clothes dusty, and his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. "Hey, mate," he called, voice rough. "Your exhaust sparking could start a fire?" "Really?" Alex asked, walking toward the back. "Thanks for flagging us down." "Emily, can you rev it for a second?" he said over his shoulder. I slid into the driver's seat and pressed the gas. The engine roared. Then bang! A sharp crack split the air. I froze. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. No wind, no hum of the engine, just the ringing in my ears. "Alex," I called, twisting in my seat. No answer. Then the man was suddenly there, right outside my window. His expression had changed. Hard, cold, mechanical. He yanked the door open before I could move. A gun gleamed in his hand. "Out," he said flatly. "What? Where's Alex?" "Out." He grabbed my arm and dragged me from the seat. My knees hit the gravel. The smell of gunpowder and oil filled the air. He twisted my wrists behind me, fast and brutal, binding them with a zip tie that cut into my skin. "Please," I gasped. "What did you do to him?" "Shut up." He shoved me toward his truck, every step jolting pain through my arms. I fought back, twisting, but he was strong, impossibly strong, when he threw me into the bed of the truck. I hit the metal hard enough to see stars. He climbed in after me, fumbling with duct tape to tie my ankles. My heart hammered so violently I thought I might pass out. Then I noticed the loose canopy flap. While he reached for more tape, I kicked out. My foot connected with his chest. He stumbled. I rolled, forcing myself through the gap and hitting the dirt running. The desert swallowed me. I didn't look back. Branches tore at my clothes and skin as I crashed through the brush. My wrists were slick with blood from the plastic ties. I ducked behind a thick bush, chest heaving, heart beating so hard I thought it would echo. Then footsteps, the crunch of gravel, the man's voice. "Come out, sweetheart. Don't make me send the dog." A low bark followed, and then another. My stomach dropped. The dog sniffed close. I could hear its paws rustling in the sand. I pressed my face into the dirt, praying it wouldn't find me. "Find her, boy," the man said softly. The animal stopped just above me, sniffed, then whined. I held my breath until my lungs burned. Finally, the leash jerked, and the man's voice faded. "Nothing here, let's go." I didn't move. Not for a long time. Only when I heard the engine start and fade into the distance did I crawl out, shaking. My wrists were numb, my throat raw from breathing so hard. I made my way to the highway, stumbling barefoot. The night was silent except for the whisper of wind. A single set of headlights appeared in the distance. I froze. What if it was him again? The first car sped past. Then a semi-truck appeared, rumbling closer. I ran into the road, waving frantically, tears streaking my face. The truck screeched to a stop. 2 people jumped out, a man and a woman. "Jesus," the woman gasped. "What happened?" "He shot my boyfriend," I stammered. "He's back there. Please help." They cut the zip ties, wrapped me in a blanket, and gave me water. The woman's hand shook as she called the police on the truck's radio. "You're safe now," she said, voice trembling. But I wasn't. Not really. The police came. They found Alex's body in the ditch beside our van, a single bullet wound behind his ear. The killer was gone. His truck vanished into the desert. It took days before they found him. Bradley Kerr, a drifter with a long record of assaults and disappearances across 3 states. DNA from my shirt sealed it. It's been years, but every Halloween it comes back. The flash of headlights, the sound of gravel, that deafening bang. Sometimes I wake up convinced. I can still hear the dogs bark in the dark. Still feel the man's hand around my wrist. And every October when the air turns crisp again, I still see Alex's smile and wonder if we'd still be laughing down some highway, if we just kept driving. Story 3. Matamoros. Last October, my buddies and I decided we needed a break. Something wild, spontaneous, and stupid enough to make for a good story later. Tom, David, Ryan, and I had been talking about it since summer. Just 4 guys in their 20s, driving south from El Paso, down to the border to see how the border towns celebrated Halloween. We wanted something different, something real. The plan was simple. Cross into Juarez, find a local festival, drink cheap beer, maybe dance, and drive back before sunrise. It was reckless, sure, but that was the whole point. I drove my old pickup truck, the one held together by duct tape and stubborn faith. The paint was faded and scratched from too many off-road weekends, but the engine still growled like it meant it. Ryan rode shotgun, flipping through radio stations, trying to find something louder than the wind. Tom and David sat in the back, the windows down, passing snacks and laughing like kids skipping class. "Man, Chris, you sure this thing will survive the border?" Tom yelled over the music, crunching on chips. He was always the loud one, never afraid to make fun of anything, especially my truck. "It got us this far from El Paso," I shot back. "If it breaks down, we walk." Adds to the adventure. David leaned forward, tapping the seat. "Yeah, and Ryan here can sweet talk our way through anything in Spanish, right?" Ryan smirked. "Only if you want tacos and beer. Anything else? You're on your own." We crossed the bridge just as the sun started to sink. Juarez was alive, streets glowing orange with lanterns, music echoing off the walls, people dancing in the streets wearing masks and skull paint. Vendors shouted over one another, selling everything from sugar skulls to papier-mâché devils. The smell of grilled meat and sweet bread clung to the air. It felt electric, chaotic, and alive in a way no American Halloween ever could. We parked a few blocks from the main street and followed the crowd toward a bar called El Puente, its neon sign flickering red like a heartbeat. Inside, the music hit hard, shaking the floorboards. We elbowed our way to a small table, ordered beers, and clinked bottles. "To stupid decisions and making it back in one piece," I said, grinning. Ryan raised his bottle. "And to not getting arrested this time." We laughed, shouting over the music. Everyone seemed to be part of one big wild pulse. But every now and then, I'd catch something that didn't fit. A shadow that lingered too long. Eyes behind a mask, watching instead of celebrating. When a man in a black hood brushed past me, his stare stayed just a second too long. "Creepy," I muttered, shaking it off, just Halloween vibes. Around midnight, Ryan stood up. "Bathroom, don't let him drink my beer." He disappeared into the crowd. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Tom joked about him flirting with someone, but when half an hour ticked by, the joke stopped. Let's check outside, I said. The streets were still pulsing with music, but now the energy felt different, thinner. We called his name, scanning the crowds. Nothing. Split up, Tom said. You and David take the main street, I'll check the alley. We searched for nearly an hour. Bars, food stalls, even a police checkpoint. But nobody had seen him. Finally back by the truck, I said what we were all thinking. This isn't right. David rubbed his forehead. If we go to the cops, they'll just say he's drunk or passed out somewhere. But we went anyway. The officer who took our report barely looked up from his clipboard. Many tourists get lost, he said in broken English. Check tomorrow. He probably found a friend. We drove back across the border in silence. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that guy in the hood again. The next morning, Ryan still hadn't called. His phone went straight to voicemail, so we printed flyers. Ryan's photo from my phone are numbers at the bottom. And headed back into Juarez, we asked everyone. Most people shook their heads, too busy or too wary to talk. But one street vendor paused when I showed him the photo. See, he said slowly. Last night with a woman, tall, pretty, then home-brisoned white truck. My stomach dropped. You saw their faces. He shook his head. No, they drive fast, outside town. Tom grabbed my arm. That's something, let's go. We spent all day chasing leads. A bartender mentioned whispers of people vanishing near the outskirts. Tourists mostly. Locals said to stay away from the old ranches where no one went after dark. Bad people there, one man warned. Cults, brujeria. By dusk, desperation outweighed fear. A shop owner pointed us toward a dirt road that led to a ranch called Santa Elena. They say people go there and don't come back, he said quietly. We parked a mile away and hiked in. The air grew heavy with dust and silence. The place looked abandoned, fences falling, sheds collapsing. But then we heard it. Chanting, we crept closer, hiding behind a rusted tractor. In the clearing, figures stood in a circle, lit by lanterns. The man in the center held a long blade, his voice low and rhythmic. Something about the tone, calm, steady, like a prayer, made my skin crawl. David leaned close. Chris, that's not a party. Before I could answer, Tom stepped on a branch. The snap echoed. The chanting stopped. Run! I hissed. We tore through the field, tripping over roots, the night exploding with shouts behind us. Somehow we made it back to the truck, hearts hammering. I floored it back toward El Paso. That night, none of us slept. The next day, we met a U.S. agent through one of our families. He listened carefully, eyes darkening as we talked. There are groups down there, he said quietly. Cartel offshoots. Some believe in rituals, offerings for protection. They mix religion, witchcraft, and violence. You think they took Ryan? Tom asked. The agent hesitated. If he's alive, we need to move fast. We didn't wait. A local kid we'd spoken to before said he saw a white truck heading towards Santa Elena again that evening, so we followed. The sun was gone by the time we reached the ranch. Shadows crawled across the fields. We killed the headlights and crept forward on foot. The smell hit us first, something rancid like blood and rot. Inside a half-collapsed shed, flickering candles burned on an altar. Bones lay scattered. Some were small, too small. Tom gagged. Jesus. Then we heard voices. 2 men passed by, talking fast in Spanish. One word cut through. El Americano. We followed them to another clearing, and that's when I saw him. Ryan tied to a post, head slumped, shirt torn. Alive, but barely. Holy shit, David whispered. We get him out, I said, now. Tom nodded, moving off to distract them. Moments later, shouting erupted on the other side of the clearing, rocks crashing, curses flying. We ran in, cutting Ryan loose. Ryan, it's us, I whispered. You're okay. He tried to speak but only rasped. They kill for power, take brains. Don't talk, I said. We're leaving. We half carried him back toward the truck as gunfire cracked through the fields. Bullets kicked up dirt around us. David shouted directions. I didn't even hear him. I just drove, pedal flat to the floor, praying the engine wouldn't die. We crossed the border an hour later, agents rushing us as we screamed for help. Ryan spent days in the hospital. When he finally woke, he told us everything. They'd grabbed him outside the bar, drugged him, taken him to the ranch. The leader, Constanzo, he said, talked about ancient rituals, sacrifices that granted invincibility. They'd already killed others. He was next. When police raided the ranch days later, they found graves, dozens, some fresh, some dating back years. Bones boiled, skulls split. Constanzo died in a shootout. His final order to his own follower was to kill him so he wouldn't be captured. We made it home, but something stayed behind that night. Now every October, when the air turns cold and the decorations go up, I think about that drive, about the crowd, the music, and the man in the hood. Some things don't hide in the dark. They dance in it, waiting for someone foolish enough to join. Story 4, Headwaters. It was the fall of 1973, and my family decided to take a long trip across the country. The kind of road trip my dad always talked about but never had time for. I was 13, thrilled at the thought of skipping school for a few weeks. Dad worked long shifts at the auto plant back in Detroit, and he'd finally saved enough vacation time to make it happen. Mom packed the old Chevy van with snacks, blankets, a camping stove, and more canned food than we could possibly eat. My little sister Lily was 7 and endlessly curious. She wanted to stop at every roadside diner we passed just to try their pie. My 2 younger brothers bickered over window seats before we'd even left the driveway. We didn't have a strict plan, just to head west, camp when we could, and celebrate Halloween somewhere new. Lily wanted to dress as a pumpkin, and I'd picked a witch costume from the discount store. Dad said we'd find some small-town carnival or local fair along the way. It sounded perfect. We left early one chilly October morning. The air smelled like wet leaves and gas fumes, and the highway stretched out like a promise. We sang songs, played I Spy, and counted license plates from different states. Dad did most of the driving, always with a coffee in hand, telling stories about growing up in the Midwest, sneaking into the old drive-in theater, or catching frogs down by the creek. Mom sat up front with the map spread across her knees, tracing our route with her finger and pointing out landmarks we might otherwise miss. By the time we reached Montana, the trees were a blaze of color, gold, copper, and crimson, glowing in the afternoon sun. We found a campground at Glacier National Park, a quiet stretch of land by a wide, slow-moving river. It felt peaceful in a way that made you breathe deeper. The sky was sharp and blue, and the air smelled faintly of pine and cold water. Dad set up the big canvas tent for him and Mom, and a smaller one for us kids. Lily clutched her stuffed bear the whole time, watching as the tent poles went up. "This is going to be the best Halloween ever," she said, her voice full of pure joy. That night we built a fire and roasted marshmallows until they were black on the outside and gooey inside. Dad told funny stories about camping disasters, tents collapsing, raccoons, stealing food, and made us laugh so hard our sides hurt. Mom brushed ashes off Lily's hair and said, "Stay close to the tents tonight, okay? No wandering." Lily nodded solemnly like she was being entrusted with a great responsibility. When the fire burned low, we crawled into our sleeping bags. My brothers were asleep almost instantly, snoring in unison. Lily nestled beside me, her small hand warm in mine, clutching her bear tight. I stayed awake for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the river and the far-off rustle of leaves. The world felt still and safe. Eventually I drifted off. I woke to a sound that didn't belong. It was soft at first, a kind of slow, dragging noise, then a rip, sharp and deliberate. My eyes adjusted to the dark. There was a slit in the side of our tent, the fabric gaping open. A faint breeze slipped through. Lily's sleeping bag was empty. Her bear was gone. I froze for a second, too afraid to move or breathe. Then I whispered her name once, twice, but there was no answer. My brothers were still out cold. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I crawled to the flap and peeked outside. The campfire had gone out, and the trees stood in silent rows, shadows shifting with the faint moonlight. I stepped out barefoot, the ground cold and damp beneath me. "Lily," I called softly, my voice barely above a whisper. No sound but the river. Then I saw them, small footprints in the dirt, and beside them, larger ones, leading away toward the parking area. I ran. "Mad, Lily's gone!" I yelled, stumbling toward their tent. They bolted upright, confusion turning instantly to panic. Dad grabbed a flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. We found Lily's stuffed animals tossed in the grass, one arm torn off, the fabric wet with dew. Mom's face went pale. "Where is she?" she cried, her voice cracking. "Lily!" Dad ran to the park office while I stood frozen, staring at the trees as if she might step out at any second. Police arrived before dawn. Lights flashing, radios crackling. They asked questions in calm, practiced tones that made everything feel even more unreal. I told them about the slit in the tent, about the footprints. One of the officers nodded grimly and said, "It looks like someone took her." They brought in dogs. The air was full of shouting engines and the rhythmic whir of a helicopter circling overhead. Mom held me close, trembling. "We'll find her," she whispered, but her voice sounded hollow. Days passed in a blur. We stayed at a nearby motel while search teams combed the woods. They found scraps of fabric, but no Lily. Halloween came and went. Her pumpkin costume hung in the van window, still folded, untouched. My witch hat sat in my lap, like something from another life. A week later, the motel phone rang late at night. Dad answered. His voice went sharp, then quiet. The caller described Lily's hands, her nails curved in a unique way like little humps. No one could have known that except family. "If you want her back," the voice said, "wait for instructions." Then he hung up. The police traced the call, but it led nowhere. The FBI got involved. Agents set up equipment in our motel room, recording every ring. Mom barely slept or ate. "Why her?" she kept whispering. "She's just a child." I didn't know what to say. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled against the motel windows. We still waited for answers that never came. In February, another girl went missing, 15, named Sandra. Her picture was on every bulletin board in town. Weeks later, they found what was left of her, burned and buried on a remote ranch. I overheard the agents whispering that it might be connected. My stomach turned to ice. Nearly a year passed before the next call came. Mom picked up this time, a man's voice calm and mocking. I've been traveling with her. She's fine. She calls me Daddy now. Mom begged to hear Lily's voice, and he just laughed before hanging up. In September, another call came from hundreds of miles away. A child's voice said, Mommy? Soft and strained as if coached. The line went dead before anyone could trace it. Eventually, suspicion fell on a local man named David, a contractor, ex-military, quiet but strange. He lived alone not far from the park. When agents approached, he smiled too easily. Mom insisted on talking to him herself. They wired her with a recorder. I waited in the car with Dad, heart pounding so loud I could barely breathe. Dad invited her in, offered her coffee, but when she mentioned missing girls, something shifted in his face. Why are you asking me that? He said, his voice low. Eyes cold. Mom didn't back down. Because I think you know something about my daughter. He stood up slowly. You should leave. She did. That night, the FBI raided his house. What they found made national headlines, freezers full of dismembered remains, photos, trophies. One small hand with the same distinctive curve in the nails, he confessed. He said he'd taken Lily from the tent, killed her that night, then burned and buried parts of her on his ranch. He admitted to Sandra, too, and another boy years earlier at the same park. Before the trial, he hanged himself in his cell. We went home after that, though it never really felt like home again. The van sat in the driveway for months, still packed with camping gear. Mom stopped baking. Dad stopped talking. And I still wake up some nights to that sound. That soft tearing of canvas, that cold air on my face. Every October, when kids in costumes knock on doors and laugh in the street, I turn off the porch light and sit by the window. Because all I can see is that empty spot beside me, and the shadow of the man who turned our family's adventure into a lifetime of ghosts. If these stories kept you up at night, maybe consider hitting that like button and subscribing. It's the perfect way to make sure we keep finding more chilling tales to share together.